welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have my April wrap up. So before we get started, I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions, and the first one is, would you prefer if I did 2 wrap-ups a month, one in the middle and one at the end? I mean, this month I only read 7 books, so it's not too many, but sometimes I do read quite a lot and I go into depth. So let me know which you prefer down below. And the second one is, I normally go through my books based on the order that I read them, but if you would prefer that I went through them in star rating or any other kind of way, like maybe binding up genres or formats together, then also let me know that down in the comments. But let's just get into some stats. So like I said, I read 7 books in April. Was not a great reading month for me. I did not read anywhere near as much as I expected to, and that is for a variety of reasons. I did slump quite a lot through the month, and in my personal life I didn't have a great month, which I think was reflected in my reading. However, the quality of the books that I read I think was quite high. I read a lot of books that I really enjoyed and not many that I didn't enjoy, and I swear that one day I will make the graphics that go like with the stats, but today is not that day. So I read 2,303 pages, which works out at an average of 76 per day. I've probably read the least of the year so far this month, but I may pick it up in May, I may not, we'll see how it goes. For the demographics, I read 5 adult books this month and only 2 YA. For the formats, I read 4 normal novels, one of which was a tome, 2 graphic novels, and 1 collection of myths, so that kind of goes into short stories, so it's like a collection of myths / short stories. For the genre, I read 3 fantasy books, 2 sci-fi, 1 collection of myths, and 1 thriller. And for my star ratings, I had no 1-star books, 1 2-star book, 1 3-star book, 2 4-star books, and 3 5-star books. So like I said, it was a great month quality-wise, but not so great quantity-wise. I think it's quite shocking that I read 5 adult books this month, although one of those, I believe in the US, is categorised as young adult, but in the UK it's marketed as adult. So that was quite shocking because I do tend to read more YA with a little bit of adult. So that was something that I was surprised to see. As I said with my March wrap up, Superhero-a-thon did run into April. So there are a couple of books that I did wrap up in my Superhero-a-thon wrap up, in which case I will just tell you what books they are and the ratings that I gave them, and you can check out the Superhero-a-thon wrap up if you want more detail. You also may remember that in April I took part in 4 readathons. The first one, Superhero-a-thon, is all wrapped up and done. Like I said, I'll refer you to that video. The second one is seasonal series, which is running for 3 months, and I'm not going to go into here which books were for what challenge for seasonal series. I will do a full wrap up at the end of the 3-month period for that readathon. The third one was the magical readathon, which was the Harry Potter Owls one. That one I will be telling you which books I read for which challenge, and I also took part in the Empty Shelfie Under the Sea readathon, which I co-hosted, and I will tell you the 2 books that I read for that and the challenges that they completed. So after that massive introduction, let's just get into the books. The first book that I read in April was Saga Volume 3 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, and then I also read Saga Volume 4. I give both of these 5 stars. Absolutely fabulous. If you don't know what this is about, it's like a Romeo and Juliet set in space, which is what everybody says. And 2 people from 2 warring planets, they make a baby, and the governments from the 2 planets send mercenaries after them. So you follow the couple and also the mercenaries, and it's all told from the baby's perspective. I feel like she's telling the story of her life from the future. Absolutely love this. So many emotions, so much representation. There's people of colour, as much as there can be with alien races and not human races. There's LGBT rep, gives you all the feels. The art is beautiful, the plot is fantastic. I will be getting the next 4 volumes for my birthday, and I will be reading them throughout May, so look out for more fangirling on this series. I did include both of these for the Elves Magical Readathon. One of them I read for astronomy, which was to read sci-fi. The other one I read for Care of Magical Creatures, which was to read a book with a magical creature in it. And I included Lion Cat from the series as my magical creature. Next, I finished Glissade by Victoria Aveyard. This is the 2nd book in the Red Queen series. For the Magical Readathon, I used this for Transfiguration, which was to read a book that includes shape-shifting or transfiguration, and in this, one of the new bloods has the ability to change her shape. I gave this one 4 stars. I do really enjoy this book and I love the series. However, Of the 3 that I have read, the final book is out in May. This is definitely the weakest one, I think, compared to the first one, which is very much political intrigue. This one is very much military based, and so it's all sort of action, and it does remind me in tone of Mockingjay, in that if you remember in Mockingjay, they have missions almost in the capital. So they'll go and they'll do something, and then they'll camp out for ages, and then they'll go somewhere, there'll be a bit of action, they'll camp out for ages. And it's sort of the same with this book, and I don't really enjoy that. I do know that the 3rd book is a good mix of the intrigue and the action and military stuff, so I do like the 3rd book more. This one, 4 stars. Still a really good book. I just don't love it as much as I love the other books in the series. Then I read this absolute beauty, and that is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I read this for the Magical Readathon, and it was for potions, which was to read a book that includes alchemy. Where do I start with this book? To describe the plot, I'm just going to tell you what everybody says. There is a young man named Laszlo Strange. He works in a library, and in the library that he works in, the librarians are the lowest of the low. Ever since he was a child and he listened to stories told to him by an elder, he has been obsessed with this magical city. The city is called Weep, although that's not its original name. Many, many years ago, the city cut off ties with anybody outside of its walls, and nobody could go in or come out, and the city was forgotten. Many years after that, the name disappeared off everyone's tongues, and they had nothing else to call it, so they called it Weep. That is all I'm going to say about this, but let me tell you, it is fantastic. You will have seen in one of my other videos, like, Laini Taylor answers questions that you never realised you were asking. You'll just be reading something and think it's perfectly normal, and she'll like twist it and change your complete perspective on what's going on. This book was beautiful, it was tragic, it is misleadingly brutal. There is a lot of serious topics handled in this. There are a lot of times where something that is seriously twisted happens, but it's hidden. Not hidden exactly, but it's written in such a flowery, beautiful, descriptive prose that it's not as harsh as the actual act itself is. The writing is absolutely magical. The storyline is breathtaking. It is a slow book, but I believe, when I was reading it at least, the way that it is told is that you don't even care that it's slow because you're just eating up every single page. This book was just... This is probably going to be the best book that I read this year. I did a whole predictions video that I'll link up above, but I predict that this will be my best book of the year. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. I was so inspired. I made candles. It's heartbreaking. It's magical. Like, it's anything that you could ever want in a fantasy book. What I will say is, for those of you hardcore fantasy lovers, is that it does have a romantic aspect, and that does take over the plot in some point. So it is one of those fantasies that is also heavily rooted in romance. So be wary of that when you go in if you are one of the people that doesn't like a heavily romance orientated plot. I personally love them. Like, romantic fantasy is like my absolute favourite. So this book got 5 stars, absolutely loved it, would recommend to anyone. This is the book that I'm going to start pushing to replace Nevernight. So if you haven't read Strange the Dreamer and you trust my opinion and like the books that I like, then read it. Read it, please. Next, I read The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. I read this for Arithmancy for the Magical Readathon, which was to read a book with a number in it. And for the Empty Shelfie Under the Sea challenge, I read this for a book that takes place on a cruise and a book with water on the cover, which you can see just a little bit down here. I gave this book 2 stars. I didn't like it. Now, I need to give you a little bit of backstory on this first. The reason that I love to read is because my mum loves to read. However, my mum reads crime and only crime. She watches crime on TV, and it's just something that I really don't like. I don't like crime orientated things. I don't like detective things. Nothing like that is for me, and I've been exposed to enough of it to know. I'm not going to say that this is a bad book, but it is definitely a mystery, like a murder mystery oriented thriller, which is not the kind that I like. Also, if you want to help me out, I really enjoyed The Roanoke Girls and I really enjoyed Emma in the Night. They are the only 2 thrillers that I've read. If you could point me to the subgenre of thriller that is, then I would be grateful so I can find more books like them, because I'm very new to the thriller genre and I don't know what the subgenres mean. So if you could help me out with that, that would be great. I've been told that I seem to like domestic or psychological thrillers, but if you're a thriller buff and you can like clear it up for me, I would really appreciate it. But back to this book. 2 stars, didn't like it, hated the main character, like really hated her. She reads like Bridget Jones in a murder mystery. She is a 30-ish year old British woman with a mild alcohol dependency, commitment issues, and general serious problems. She will not let things go. People are telling her to let things go. She's fixated on things that most people would just disregard and pretend or think they imagined it. And I didn't think she was likable or relatable or realistic in some aspects. I did switch between the book and the audiobook of this. I read, I think, the first chapter physically and then switched to the audiobook. I found that much easier to listen to. If you like audiobooks, I do think that the one for this is really good. Didn't really like the narrator too much because she had like a... See, I am British and certain things about Britain and British people can get on my nerves, and the narrator's accent really annoyed me, like paired with the way that she was written, really grated on my nerves. But the audiobook was very well done. So if you do like audiobooks and you like thrillers, then maybe give this a try on audiobooks. I thought it was good. This one is about a girl who is a travel journalist, which is another like typical middle-aged British woman book drama job trope thing. And she's been drinking midweek and she wakes up in the night and discovers that she's being burgled. So she has trauma from that because she found a burglar in her house. She's trying to push forward with her career, so she tells her boyfriend that she doesn't want to live with him. Commitment issues, like I said. And she goes on this trip that her boss should have gone on, but her boss is on maternity leave, so she goes on the trip instead to report on this like boutique cruise's first journey. In the middle of the night, she hears a splash and thinks that a woman has been thrown overboard and that somebody has been murdered, and then she won't stop going on about it. Don't really want to give you more than that because it's a thriller, but just know that it might not be a bad book. I just didn't like it. It's not the thriller for me, and it just... I don't want to read any more thrillers like this. Then I read Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I got this from the library. This one I read for the Magical Readathon for Divination, which was a book that features a prophecy. I did originally have it in for History of Magic, but because I couldn't finish both books, I picked which subject I would rather pass, and that was Divination. I gave this one 3 stars. I did like it, but I didn't love it. There were a few stories that I really liked. The one about Fenrir was really interesting, and I liked Ragnarok. The one about the end of the world. I liked that one. But this is a collection of Norse mythology, obviously, told by Neil Gaiman. He does a good job of colloquialising it, making it more readable for a modern audience. The way that the gods speak to each other is very natural and easily digestible by somebody who is not looking for a dense historical mythology text. There were a couple of stories that I didn't like and I felt they were just kind of pointless, which is why I did only give it 3 stars. I didn't think it was phenomenal, but like I said, it was okay. And what I did like about it is that all, or almost all, of the stories that lead up to Ragnarok became relevant when it got to the end of days retelling at the end. So I did enjoy that, but overall 3 stars. Wasn't overly impressed, but it was good, and I liked the sort of storytelling of myths as opposed to the other Greek myths book I was reading, which was more textbooky. I did notice in this, I don't know anything about Norse mythology, so I don't know if it's the same as Greek mythology, but in Greek mythology there's a lot of incest and rape, and there wasn't in this Norse mythology book. So I don't know if it's been taken out to be more audience friendly or whether Norse mythology was just less rapey, but there is that as well. Then the last book that I read in April was Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton. I gave this one 4 stars. I did like it. For the Empty Shelfie Readathon, I read this for my challenge to read a book set in a foreign land. I also read it for the challenge to read a book with blue and gold on the cover, and also the challenge to read a book with a tropical world in the title, which was Sands. And for the Magical Readathon, I read this for Herbology, which was to read a book with a nature word in the title, which again was sand. So this took me 9 days to read because I was just in a really shitty place mentally while I was trying to read it. So I can't tell you a great deal about it, but it is about a girl called Amani. She grows up in this remote town in the desert. She's really good at shooting a gun. She lives in a society where women are oppressed and are only valued at whatever their husbands or uncles or dads put on them. They're not independent, they're sort of property. And this is a life that isn't for Amani. Her mother has been killed and she wants to get out. She meets a mysterious traveller called Jin who has the means to get her out, and they go on an adventure, sort of hating each other, loving each other, sort of thing. 4 stars. Did enjoy it. Couldn't really rate it properly because I was so slumpy while I was reading it. I didn't remember a whole lot. I was very tired. I have a bit of a throat infection at the minute, so it's making me like kind of groggy. And there was also like 2 days where I didn't read at all. So it was a very disjointed experience reading this book, but I did like it. So I kind of went for 4 as opposed to 3 because I didn't think it was fair to rate this lower than it may have been if I'd have given it my full attention. I have ordered the next 2 books in this series and I will be continuing. It reminded me in tone of the Lunar Chronicles, so it was obviously a completely different setting because the Lunar Chronicles is a sci-fi set in space, mostly in space, and this was set in the desert. Sort of a fun YA fantasy, so it had that kind of tone. Nothing too serious, nothing too like gritty or dense, just really fun. A really great adventure. I would recommend it for lovers of YA fantasy, so check this out if that sounds like something you're into. On another note, I did DNF a book this month, and that was the Greek myths book that I was reading by Robin Waterfield. It just kind of picked it up after not reading it for almost a month and couldn't be bothered reading it, so I did just take it back to the library. And when I was trying to get all the L's, I did replace it with another book that I'm currently reading for Muggle Studies. So I was trying to get Muggle Studies done before the end of the readathon. Obviously I failed, but I am currently reading From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doughty. This is the second book by the YouTuber Ask a Mortician, who is a mortician, and she sort of goes into the process of cremation and iconic corpses and death practices and different cultures' approaches on death. And I read her first book, which is called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, which was kind of like a memoir, and I did really enjoy it, but I do prefer this one. I am 193 pages of like 240 in, so I am almost done with this. And this goes into different cultures' practices surrounding death, the celebrations that they have. For example, one country digs up their dead, redresses them, takes pictures with them. I think, was that Indonesia? Yeah, that one's Indonesia, so that's what they do. And it has a little bit about the Day of the Dead in Mexico in here. Japan is really interesting, and I think I'm currently up to Bolivia, but I haven't got into that too much yet. So really interesting. We'll have this finished hopefully tonight. I'm filming this on the 1st of May and I'm hoping to get it done tonight because I have much more that I want to read, but that's my current read. And that's everything for my April wrap up. Normally I film at the weekend and I get myself together and I'm really into it, but I had to film this after work, so the light is dying, so I'm trying to be a little bit quick. And I also was all over the place, threw makeup on, whatever, so if it's a little rambly, I'm sorry. Please let me know in the comments if you've read any of these. And also please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head into the description box below, you can find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram, and also a discount code for that if you're interested in anything like that. But that's it from me today. Bye!